Hello, it is Tutor Doctor here, and you're welcome to my free lesson session for jamb. And in today's lecture, we're going to be discussing a continuation of industrial chemistry. Industrial chemistry. So today we're going to be talking about the things that are being produced. Now, in industrial chemistry, companies usually produce two types of chemical. Companies will usually produce either heavy chemicals, or the company might produce fine chemicals. Now, what is a heavy chemical? What is a fine chemical? Now, heavy chemicals, they are chemicals that are required in large quantities. All right, they usually produce them plenty. All right, for example, these heavy chemicals, they are required in very large quantities. Very much, like the companies, they produce them very much in amount because people use them in large amount. For example, like soap now. All right, you can't be running a soap industry and you are producing just 1 cup of soap. How many people will use it in the community? So you produce plenty. Another thing is like fertilizer. All right, so these are things you produce large amounts. All right, large amount. And why this is important is because if you are producing large amount of substances, yes, purity might be important, but in this case where you are dealing with large amount of chemicals, purity is not really the concern. So they don't have very high purity. The purity is not 100% because there is room for impurity. For example, like soap now, right? Because if you run a soap company and then you have some impurity in your soap, it doesn't mean that the soap will not foam. The soap will still foam and people will still use it and enjoy it. All right, so in soap, that's why you see soap industries, they will put some of them will put perfumes in their soap. That perfume is an impurity, but it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, the soap will still do the work it is needed to do. So examples of heavy chemical will be things like, for example, sulfuric acid like H2SO4. Sulfuric acid is very important in like fertilizer production, in chemical equations and chemical reactions. So companies produce this acid in large amounts. All right, another one is caustic soda. It is another heavy chemical, caustic soda. Caustic soda is our normal sodium hydroxide. So caustic soda, it is used by soap industry to produce soap. So you need large amounts. All right, so this is another example of heavy chemical. Another example is chlorine. For example, chlorine is another heavy chemical because it is used in disinfection, like your hypo now. Your hypo bleach, it is actually sodium hypochlorite. Hypo is actually, it contains sodium hypochlorite. So that chlorite there is the actual thing that bleaches the cloth and disinfects and kills bacteria. So chlorine is also needed in large amount, and it is a heavy chemical. So the main thing you need to remember about heavy chemicals is that, number one, they are produced in large quantities, and then number two, heavy chemicals, typically heavy chemicals, they don't need very accurate purity. The purity doesn't need to be 100%. No, heavy chemicals can be produced and then the purity is 90-something%, is okay. Now we're going to talk about fine chemicals now. So for fine chemicals, on the other hand, fine chemicals, they are chemicals that are produced in small quantities, and because they are produced in small quantities, they need to be very, very pure. They need to be very pure. at least 99% purity, almost 100% purity. Now, example of this is basically drugs. You don't want to be taking paracetamol now, and it's not pure. It has impurity in it. It can give somebody, a problem if you swallow it. So the companies that are producing paracetamol need to produce it to be very, very pure, because it's not required in large amounts. All right. So the little one you will produce has to be very pure to serve the purpose. Another example is like perfumes. Companies that produce perfume, they don't produce it in large amounts, very small, and it is very expensive. So if they are producing, they produce it in very pure amounts so that it can serve the purpose. Another example of fine chemical would be like, let's say, just think of drugs generally, drugs and also dyes like coloring agents, and also sweeteners like sugar, like saccharin and stuff like that. Those are fine chemicals, because and also food chemicals too, like sweeteners, like preservatives. All these, they are things that go into the human body, and anything that will go into the human body needs to be pure so that people will not swallow poison. So I hope you understand the difference between heavy chemicals and fine chemicals in this lecture, and I hope I've been able to help you demystify this.